DePIN State is a show designed to give you, the watcher, whether you are a founder, a deployer, or an investor, or someone just interested in learning more about the DePIN space in general, a pretty quick dive into any given project. Most of the episodes we have are about 15 minutes. Some are a little bit shorter. Today's episode is actually a little bit longer. Our guest thought he had 60 minutes. I thought we had 15 minutes. We split the difference. We go for about 30. So this one is a little bit longer than usual. You'll learn about how OpenMesh is using data centers around the world and allowing you to access the speed and reliability of a data center and make sure you get a piece of that stream of value that they are throwing off. So let's get into it. Welcome back to the DePIN State. I'm your host, Nick Hawks. On today's episode, we have Ashton, who is the founder over at OpenMesh Network. This episode is sponsored by Goldhawks & Associates, the most experienced DePIN consultancy in the space. We help projects develop strategy, messaging, and token incentives. We'll have a little bit more on us later in the show. Before we get started, make sure you hit the like, subscribe, smash the bell, all those things. That helps us keep bringing great guests like Ashton to you. Ashton, welcome. Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm psyched. You're down in Sydney. I'm up in San Diego. You're in Australia in general. I think Sydney. So we're in very different time zones. For folks who haven't heard of OpenMesh, I know you guys have been around for a couple of years. I think 4 years as an open source project. Tell us a little bit about who you are and how you came to OpenMesh, and then we'll get into what it is.
Sure. I got into crypto, Web3, how you want to call it, in 2015. I used to be kind of like a voice for Ethereum here in Sydney. I used to run Ethereum meetups in 2015.
Nice.
And Bitcoin meetups. Early days, it was just basically talking about how to mine Bitcoin. I was fascinated about the decentralization idea, because for the first time in history, you have a digital kind of organism. I call it organism, and being able to live and breathe, self-evolving, self-governing, is really, really amazing thing. So so I got into Ethereum in 2015, and then I started a research firm called Blockchain Partners Holdings. Is basically looking at the correlation between what people gossip on social media to the liquidity on centralized exchanges.
Okay.
And then on top of that, we basically evaluate a lot of white papers, and then we just publish reports. We literally call out a lot of scams in 2016. And yeah,
so plenty to call out, right?
There's so much crap. But it was interesting to me because if a group of people like try to convey an idea, and they sometimes thoughtful, and obviously my background is not technical. However, I love to learn the abstract ideas of these white papers. What they're talking about. Most of the stuff is garbage, but at the same time, they were like really cool ideas, talking about future, and then like insights that some of the teams have. It is really fascinating, right? So how they see the world and what kind of problem they see. So I love like reading a lot of white papers, early days, a lot of garbage. And then 2017, this is where I kind of like moved into like a Sydney CBD, and this is where I met Michael Kong, and through mutual contacts. So Michael Kong is CEO of OpenMesh. Phantom. So Phantom. So he was an advisor before. So when I moved to Sydney, we kind of shared our shared offices together. And then Phantom, it was a Korean project. It came to our desk and we started evaluating it. The value proposition was Ethereum killer, L1 chain, DAG-based smart contract platform, EVM compatible. It's really sexy, but it's just a white paper. So I joined as an advisor, and also Michael Kong as well. And then so we worked for a few months, and June 2018 we raised like $40 million, which is a really bad idea. Raising so much money when you don't want, it's a bad idea. But so after that, and then we had a 2018 market crash. So the treasury management, I think we were quite inexperienced at that time, so treasury management wasn't a thing at that time. So we raised Ethereum at like $500 to $600, and then everything crashed for like $180 or $150. And then so Phantom had to rebuild from scratch. So we I was quite privileged to work with people like Andre and Michael Kong. So Andre came like August. Andre 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐬𝐤𝐢𝐧𝐠, he came to Phantom 2018 August maybe.
Okay.
And then so slowly building. So he was focusing on on-chain, more like a technical role. I took a little bit more senior role in product and innovation. My idea was so what is L1 chain? Is a consensus as a service. So where's the real world use case? So for me, more like smart cities, applications into government sector. So I was kind of like driving that. And it was a bad idea, by the way, trying to work with government. So, so I made a lot of mistakes during that time. I think my idea at that time, like, hey, it has to be real, right? So why don't we use technology for real world use cases? So through Phantom, I managed to kind of like get a really nice position in the government as an advisor. So UAE government, they had a project called Foresight Initiative. It's one of the largest blockchain related project called Foresight Initiative 2020.
Okay.
So so I joined Dubai Future Foundation as an advisor while I was working with Phantom, and that allowed me to actually understand, do we really need a blockchain, right? So the understanding between the DLTs and try to work with stakeholders, because when you try to talk to people, hey, this is a smart contract and this is consensus algorithms, people don't really understand.
Like, yeah, whatever, sure.
So but the cool thing is I had kind of like a green pass to talk to regulators, green pass to talk to banks, work with central bank and real estate industry for tokenization, trade finance, supply logistics, tourism industry, road and transport. So we worked for like 8-9 months to understand sort of use cases for blockchain. And then
you had you had the green pass because you're working for UAE and they're just like, hey, go figure this out. And so you can say, hey, or no.
UAE government is like, to me, specifically Dubai government, they run like a startup, right? So you go to you go to like senior members and say, hey, this is what I think is good. Okay, just go and do it, right? So there's no much bureaucracy like in between. In Australia, if you want to get things done, there's a lot of process and governance in place. But over there, like you have an idea, you can just go and test immediately.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So that gets us to 2018, 2020-ish, something like that?
2020-ish. So late 2020, this is where I was looking at right after government work. And I was kind of like, okay, so large scale use cases aren't real yet.
Right.
So I was going back to, again, the on-chain world, because applying, let's say, consensus as a service to real world, like a banking industry or trade finance, I thought it was a bad idea. So I just went back to like on-chain, because I think Andre and we had this kind of like a disagreement. Andre was saying, Ashton, you have to focus on something that on-chain, like, build something on top of a chain, like DeFi. And I was like, no, you need like something real world application. So and he was right about it. So, and I came back to on-chain world, and I was looking at, okay, so what are the bigger problems in our space? So one of the key issue I found in our space, in Web3 space specifically, the node viability. So node operators economic viability. So what that means, so think about like in any distributed network. So any distributed network, you need to have independent verifier node operators, or let's call it independent verifiers in the network. So the more nodes you have in the network is better for the network. For increased finality, you have a distribution of, let's say, the verification, and then you also have like being able to run applications on top of your chain.
Sure.
Now, and in order for you to run a node, you have to have economic viability. So let's take the Ethereum as an example for proof of stake. Ethereum, maybe it will cost you on AWS to run Ethereum node maybe $200 a month. and in 12 months, you know your costs, and the Ethereum network going to pay you Ethereum in return. But the price the amount that you get in Ethereum, and also the price of Ethereum, if your underlying cost, if you can't even cover the underlying cost, so why would you run a node in the first place, right? So on the other hand, if you look at L1 chains or typically distributed networks, they need to come up with different treasury proposals to incentivize these node operators, right? So in other words, they basically issuing more tokens and allow node operators to farm more tokens, because otherwise they're not going to run it. If you don't have enough nodes, the network is not ideal, right? So I was looking at, okay, so why $200 for Ethereum on AWS, right? So that was like the question. So we started experiment with AWS. So we got into Lift program, start building infrastructure, and just want to understand the billing, right? So if you're selling pizzas in Sydney, and if I were to disrupt the industry, so let's say average price is $10 per pizza, but I want to sell it for, let's say, 50 cents or $1. I want to understand, okay, where the cost. So so we were looking at to break that, because if we somehow manage to break that problem, I thought that's going to solve a lot of problems. Because if you look at any industry in general, forget about Web3, any industry, if you want to accelerate an industry or accelerate an ecosystem like a city, you need better transportation, you need hospitals, you need parks, you need roads, you need train stations, and in basically this infrastructure, right? So you need to have better infrastructure. So I feel like in Web3 we have like a dial-up type of a connectivity, and I want to bring fiber. So at the same time, if you look at Web2 world, we have established 30-40 year long data centers and servers that doing a great job, a very efficient job, very stable job in Web2 world. And I was thinking, okay, if you bring those data centers, if you bring those unused compute GPU bandwidth into Web3 somehow, and allow developers, allow startups to utilize those unused compute, unused bandwidth, unused GPUs to run like a nodes, right? That was the first use case. So that was the experiment.
And was the idea that people would have it like in their own house, or that they would rent part of a data center, or you weren't sure when you started how that was going to work?
The original idea was peer-to-peer, right? So the original idea, it was, okay, so I have my laptop and you're in San Diego. I wanted to rent my laptop to you. So imagine I go into a simple front end, and I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to donate these resources to you for a specific time of a specific period. So you say you want my laptop, you want to host a website on my laptop for 5 hours, right? So, and I'm going to provide that. So the original idea is to peer-to-peer. So I will manage your website on my laptop, and then, but I cannot have access to that because it will be a sort of a wrapper. It will be a wrapper, and then you will have access to my portion of my laptop for
just renting resources.
That was the original idea, but we looked at the practicality, because in order for me to make sure I'm going to give you that service for 5 hours, how do you make sure I'm accountable, right? So now we have solutions for that. For early days like 2020, 2021, we didn't have the solutions. So, but then we shifted to focus on data centers specifically. So let's say you wanted to host a website, and you can quickly go and find a bunch of data centers, unused servers, and you can deploy there.
Okay, cool. And so that's what it is at this point, is where we are now. Is that if I'm participating in the OpenMesh, I'm coming in and saying, hey, I'm going to rent out some part of a data center and then make that available to someone else? Am I missing something?
Yeah. So right now, I'm quite mature how we do things. So we have a concept called Xnode. So Xnode essentially this X node stands for, you can replace X with anything, right? So you can either run a validator node, you can run a game node, you can run a data cloud node, you can run a web hosting node, you can run an AI node. That's the whole idea.
Sure. Yep.
So the way it works, so we have a front end called Xnode Studio. It's kind of like a cloud console. You go there and you've got a bunch of templates, because this is another problem I found, right? So whenever I go to conferences, Web3 conferences, or when I meet people in Web3, I ask question, have you been in how long have you been in Web3? And the answer, they're like, okay, I've been in Web3 for 3 years, 4 years. I'm like, okay, so have you run a node? Have you run a node? And most people say, well, I haven't run a node. I'm like, okay, you are in Web3, but why haven't you run a node? The answer, well, it's complicated. I don't know. It's technical. I'm not technical. Sometimes even developers can't run a node because it's very expensive. User experience sucks, and it's risky someone to run a node, right? And they don't know the economic viability upfront, so they don't even commit, right? So only specific number of type of people able to run a node, and if you think about our industry, like take Ethereum ecosystem, right? So Ethereum ecosystem, you have, so let's say this is the node infrastructure. So the node infrastructure, you've got all the node operators. On upper level, you've got the consensus and execution layer of Ethereum. And then you have DeFi, you have GameFi, you have DAOs, you've got lots of applications on build on top. And then you have RPC related businesses. You have integrated into other protocols. You have cross-chain communication. You've got services endless. Coming from Web 2 to Web 3, and then you have developers, you have founders, you have Web 3 startups, DAOs, and then you have speculators, you have ETFs on top. I mean, it's a huge ecosystem, right? So trillions of dollars worth of ecosystem. And to me, the biggest problem, so the underlying nodes, after Ethereum moved from proof of work to proof of stake, the underlying nodes, like last year, December, when we looked at looked at the data, more than 70% or 75% of all Ethereum POS on public cloud, right? Like GPS, GCP, and AWS.
Yep.
Now, so where's the decentralization, right? So that was a big challenge. So the goal is to move that away. So the original idea of internet is to have, keep things decentralized and fair and distributed. And what happened, during internet time, into Web 2 world, few corporations started gaining control of the data infrastructure. They built the data centers for themselves, and they start gobbling up so much data. Now, I mean, that's bad enough, right? So if you think about our world infrastructure, IT infrastructure, and the world data is controlled by 4 to 5 companies, and we're supposed to trust that. And the challenge is the very same companies like AWS and GCP, they're basically gobbling up Web3 industry, right? So the problem today, critical services on Web3, for example, Web3 front ends, especially Web3 front ends, Web3 databases, because we are not fully on chain, right? So we still rely on Web2 components. If you interact with Uniswap, it's a front end. It talks to a smart contract, but it's a front end. If you look at 𝐒𝐮 is a front end, but the database is not on chain, right? So they have a cache databases hosted in a Web2 component, Web2 environment, and they probably talk to Ethereum in a second by second basis. However, you still have a databases, some sort of a server, Web2 server. So we have lots of Web3 critical applications, services are running using Web2 components. Now the question, if all of these critical applications and APIs, RPC services, front-end databases are on centralized, controlled providers.
How decentralized is it?
Where's the decentralization?
Yeah, for sure.
Right. Where's the decentralization? And also challenge, imagine if government or regulator wants to shut down a service like Uniswap. They basically reach out to AWS and say, shut this down. They will reach out to
Okay, so you guys aren't renting individual AWS nodes. You're going to directly to a data center and you're renting, God, what's it called? Bare metal, something, some fancy thing. You're saying like, okay, cool. I can get that. Let's see. So that gives me who you are and how you came to it. Let's take a quick break and we'll talk about today's sponsor, Gold Hawks and Associates. We're a DePIN consultant firm helping projects with strategy, messaging, and token incentives. We run a blog for founders over at goldandhawks.com, produce this show, and most importantly, work with the core teams and communities of your favorite projects in the space to ensure tokenomics and incentives are fully aligned to build out some of the most badass physical infrastructure networks in the world. If your project needs help in any of these, check out goldandhawks.com. Okay, Ashton. So for a lot of DePINs, like Helium or HiveMap or Demo or Onakoi or Threefold or anyone, is you can buy a miner for whatever it is, $300 to $700. You put it in your home, and that's what makes it a decentralized physical thing. It sounds like in your case that folks aren't actually buying those miners; they're buying like a slice of a data center. So it's an interesting kind of twist on it. Am I getting that right, or is that not really how it works?
At the moment, so the current option, because we want to focus on providing reliability, right? So when I say reliability, if someone wants to host a website or run a Ethereum node, the reliability has to be there. So we focus on allowing users to basically host their services on data centers. Now, the cool thing is what we're working on right now is being able to you own the VPS or the virtual machine. So what that means, so imagine if you're a startup, Web3 startup, you want to host your critical infrastructure on AWS. You have to set up an account, you have to have your KYC done, and you have to have your you got to have your a credit card. Now, what we offer basically no KYC, and your virtual machine wrapped in a ERC contract. So in other words, it's a smart contract, and also it's an NFT. So it's a similar way how we treat our assets. So let's say I have Ethereum in my wallet, let's say MetaMask, or I have ERC assets in my wallet. The only person can have access is me, right? So no one can take my assets away, because Ethereum network is protect that. Ethereum network is actually provide that security and integrity. So we use the same principle. So this is where the immutable cloud idea came from. So if you as a user, when you provision a VM on a data center that we have integrated with, what we do, we provide you kind of like a tunnel, and in the tunnel is wrapped in an Ethereum security. So, and you connect your wallet and no KYC, and then you have your virtual machine. So now between you and the virtual machine, it's just your wallet, right? So with your wallet, you can activate your VM. And then we have our app store. It's called Xnode Studio. We have a bunch of apps. You can download apps like without even coding it. So instead of having infrastructure as a code, we have infrastructure as a sort of a deployment. So you have a bunch of templates. You can go from ideation for production like in few minutes. Let's say if you want to deploy a Llama into your bare metal, it takes like few minutes. If you want to run an Ethereum node, it will take like 2 minutes. If you want to host, let's say, a website, if you want to run your Minecraft server, it's like 40 seconds to a minute just to
super fast.
Yeah. So we have something called Xnode OS, is operating system based out of 𝐾𝐞𝐏. So that's the package management, but also containerization. So when you as a user provision a VM, what it does, it deploys 𝐾𝐞𝐏, which is our operating system, Xnode OS, and it takes care of virtualization, and it's also installed your dependencies, runtime, and then also start installing the packages. So if you choose, let's say, WordPress, it's going to install a package on top. And then on top of that, it starts installing our core, OpenMesh core, because every node that uses provisioning, we kind of like force everyone to run an OpenMesh core. So OpenMesh core kind of OpenMesh node itself as well. So every node, every service that people provision each node becoming OpenMesh validator node at the same time.
Interesting. Okay, and then I guess the question comes is, why wouldn't I just go straight to a data center and rent my own little slice of it? Why would I rent and then, or why would I go through you guys and have you guys basically rent it for me?
Yeah, sure. So we don't rent it. We don't have only relationship we have. Of course, we have a commercial discount that we negotiated. So we want to push all the discount directly to the customers, and we don't do any KYC. We don't even know what customers are deploying it, right? So all we do, someone like, let's say, an end user comes to our Xnode Studio,
yep,
pick a template, and then search for different servers in the network. So it's kind of like a Skyscanner, right? So the idea of right now, a lot of Web3 startups, they only have one choice. So what we did was kind of like we brought the idea like Airbnb for infrastructure. So now with our Xnode Studio, if you want to run Ethereum node, and you can just say, okay, select Ethereum, running Ethereum node, and then search for a bunch of servers. So it basically aggregates the data centers. So we connect with Equinix, High Velocity, and Volta, and DigitalOcean. So it scans for virtual machines that match the specification of Ethereum. And then if you like the price and if you like the region, you click a button, and then it says, okay, now you need to set up your account with the provider. At that time, you can use your wallet to do that. You can skip KYC.
Okay. So the only kind of KYC you're doing is you're providing your wallet, and that's it. So that's all that someone's going to know about you.
So as long as it come through Xnode Studio, so the data centers will accept that being a valid customer, and then customer look after the billing, and customer pay directly to the data center, so they can pay in crypto, in fiat, whatever.
Interesting. Okay. Cool. Super cool. Well, I don't want to go too far into it. I don't want to waste a ton of your time or burn a ton of your time. I know it's start of your day there and you're about to crush. For folks who want to know more about it, where do they go learn more? What's the website?
OpenMesh.network.
OpenMesh.network. All right. Yeah. We will send them there. I'll put that down in the description. Ashton, thanks a ton for your time. Really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me.